Ongoing assessment. An assessment that guides the pace and content of instruction. Ongoing assessments are used to determine student knowledge and dictate whether the class is prepared to move on to a new skill. Heterogeneous group. Group comprised of individuals working on various levels. A small group of students with varying academic abilities working together on a science project is a heterogeneous group. Electronic book. Book published in digital format, also known as an e-book. Students may read electronic books through various programs such as Reading A through Z on devices such as tablets and laptops. Automatic stage. The final stage of word recognition in which a person decodes fluently and knows many strategies to identify new words. Students in the automatic stage of word recognition are able to read fluently and with greater comprehension because their focus shifts more toward the meaning of the text as a whole and less on individual words. Full alphabetic stage. A stage of word recognition in which students use their full working knowledge of letter-sound correspondence to decode unfamiliar words letter by letter. A child comes across the word desk while reading and sounds it out. D-E-S-K. Independent reading. Reading done by students independent of the teacher. This reading can be either assigned or student selected, typically silence. Instructional reading level. A reading level that is challenging for the student but manageable with teacher support. They have difficulty with no more than 1 out of every 10 words. Qualitative measures of text. Aspects of a text that can only be measured by a reader. Meaning or purpose, structure, language, conventionality, and clarity knowledge demands. Passive participants. Students who let their minds wander elsewhere. English language learners, ELLS. Students who are learning the English language or for whom English is not a first language. Alphabetic knowledge. The ability to recognize, name, and write letters. Running record. A reading assessment administered as a student reads aloud and teacher listens. Teachers may record miscues, note strategies used, observe fluency, and time for WPM to determine the next steps of action for a student's reading instruction, including whether or not a student should move up a text level for guided reading. Receptive language. The ability to understand meaning from language. Auditory learning. Learning primarily by hearing things. Lectures. Genre. Various forms of text including short stories, essays, folk tales, fairy tales, poetry, historical fiction, biographies and autobiographies, memoirs, comedies, and tragedies. Night by L. Wilson is an example of a memoir. Tactical methods. Lessons using materials for students to touch and handle. Encouraging students to take notes, use study sheets, build dioramas or models. Consolidated alphabetic stage. A stage of word recognition in which students read by using memorized letter chunks, affixes, and syllables to read words. A student in this stage would not need to sound out each letter in a word like reminder, but would decode it by breaking it into recognizable chunks. Reminder. Visual methods. Lessons using materials for students to view. Maps, images, political cartoons, multimedia presentations, and graphs. Literature circles. A strategy in which a teacher organizes students into small groups to discuss a common text. Learning style. The manner in which a student learns best. For example, visual learning. Scaffolding. A method of teaching that involves gradually removing aids when teaching new concepts. When teaching how identify adjectives, a teacher starts with explicit teaching. Then she leads the class in guided instruction and repeats or rephrases the necessary information. Next, she prompts the students with questions like, what kind and which one? Eventually, students identify adjectives independently. Miniature text. Books or other pieces of literature that are revisited throughout the school year for different purposes in literacy instruction. Due to its unique narrative and abundance of figurative language, Al Moon by Jane Yolen is a popular mentor text to use in a language arts classroom. Reading intervention. A strategy applied to assist a struggling reader. Reading interventions can help children overcome reading difficulties and become proficient readers. Miscue insertion. When the reader adds a word or a group of words to the text, an enthusiastic reader adds the word very into dialogue when reading. Differential complexity. How difficult the vocabulary, sentence, structure, and organization is to understand within a text. When assessing the complexity of a text, a teacher should determine if the skill or content be broken down into more simple components. Miscue substitution. When the reader replaces a word in the text with a different word, a reader reads, she completed from A, B, and C instead of she completed form A, B, and C. Differential pacing. How much content is presented and how fast the content is presented. Teachers may need to adjust pacing to allow students time to comprehend difficult text. Word list. A list of words taken out of context and written or printed consecutively. Word list will specifically require students to read the words without the help of context from a sentence or story, an important factor in determining their stage of word recognition. Partial alphabetic stage. A stage of word recognition when students combine their limited alphabetic knowledge with context clues to read. A child sees a picture of a truck in a book about vehicles, locates a word that starts with T on the same page and says, truck. Auditory methods. Lessons using methods for students to listen to, such as speeches, music, or direct instruction.